on Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I recommend using headphones if you'd like to hear the gentle mic brushing. Before I get to tonight's case, I would like to take a moment to tell you about an amazing digital healthcare platform called Nurex. Nurex makes it easy to get the expert healthcare that you deserve. Thanks to Nurex for sponsoring this video. Taking control of your health starts here. Nurex offers more than 50 clinically proven dermatologist-trusted treatments for anti-aging and acne. For example, Nurex offers well-known effective retinoid treatments, which are up to 20 times more powerful than over-the-counter retinols. To get started, all you need to do is complete an online medical history and select the medication that you need. Next, a licensed Nurex provider reviews your request, and once your request is accepted, you will have an online consultation. Prescribed medications will be mailed to you, and you will have unlimited messaging with expert providers who will answer any questions that might arise for you. For me, skincare is very important. The first thing people see is my face, so I want to do everything I can to keep my skin looking good. Personally, I find going to a doctor's office for skincare to be very inconvenient. With Nurex, you can skip the time-consuming trip to see the doctor in person and still get expert treatment and powerful prescription-strength treatments if they are warranted. Thanks to Nurex for sponsoring this video. Taking control of your health starts here. Go to nurex.com/truecrimetime-ASMR to get started, or click the link in the description. That's nurx.com/truecrimetime-ASMR. Results may vary, not offered in every state. Medications prescribed only if clinically appropriate consultation required. Now let's get back to the case. Tonight we are traveling on down to Florida. Shout out to all my friends in Florida. This case took place in the year 2006, and it is the case of Jennifer Kesse. So let's get started with some background on Jennifer. She was born on May 20th, 1981 in New Jersey to her parents Joyce and Drew Kesse. She also had a brother named Logan. At some point in her childhood, she and her family moved to Tampa, Florida. After she graduated from Vivian Gaither High School in Tampa, she attended the University of Central Florida in Orlando and graduated in 2003 with a degree in finance. Her family describes her as a strong, fun-loving, career-minded, and responsible young woman. Now, by the start of 2006, Jennifer was 24 years old. She was working as a finance manager at Central Florida Investments timeshare company, and she had just bought a condominium in a gated community in Orlando. She had been dating a man named Rob Allen for a year, and they were in love. It was a little bit of a long-distance relationship because he lived in Fort Lauderdale, which was 3 hours from her, but they made it work. And in mid-January of that year, 2006, they took a vacation together in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. They returned from their trip on she spoke on the phone to her boyfriend. And then the next morning, it was typical for her to either call or text her boyfriend when she left for work in the morning. It was just a thing that she always did. So when he did not hear from her, he reached out, but he couldn't contact her. His call went straight to voicemail. So this was Tuesday, January 24th, that we're talking about. And by 11 that morning, when she hadn't shown up for work, which was also very strange for her, her employer called her parents and told them, and they drove immediately from their home in Tampa to her condo in Orlando. It was a 2-hour drive. And when they got there, nothing looked unusual. Like, her car was missing. But inside of her apartment, it just looked like she had gotten up and gotten ready for work. You know, there was like a wet towel, and, you know, it appeared that she just had a typical morning. But they were very concerned nonetheless, because where was she? So they contacted police, and police did not take them seriously, which is somewhat understandable at that point, you know. She had just been missing for a couple of hours, and, you know, they said, oh, she'll return. She probably had a fight with her boyfriend and just, you know, took off somewhere. But her parents knew her better than that, and they said, no, that is not her. That is not something that she would have done. She would not just disappear and not take anyone's calls. But anyway, by that evening, when she was still missing, the police officially declared her missing. Family and friends of Jennifer distributed flyers about her disappearance that evening, and the Orlando Police Department organized search parties on foot and horseback, as well as by boat, helicopter, car, and ATV. So it was a huge search, and hundreds of volunteers from the community came out to help with the search as well. But nobody found anything helpful. Investigators believed that on the morning that she went missing, so January 24th, she had left her apartment for work, locked her front door, and was then abducted, either while walking towards the car or getting into the car. Now, 2 days after she went missing, on the 26th of January, at around 8:10 a.m., her car was found. It was a 2004 Chevrolet Malibu, and it was parked at a different apartment complex that was about a mile from where she lived. Now, surveillance camera footage from that apartment complex showed an unidentified person of interest who dropped off her car at noon on the day she went missing. Now, according to her father, Drew Kesse, quote, he pulls into a parking spot next to the pool area, backs out to even straighten himself in there, sits in there for 32 seconds, gets out, walks away, never looks back, end quote. And then this person can be seen walking away in the direction exactly. And they could see that this person was wearing something that looked like what a maintenance worker would wear. And they said they noticed he had big feet. The FBI was called in to, take a look at this image and try to, come out with some better idea of what the person looked like. And all they could really say was that they were between 5'3" and 5'5". Even NASA was contacted to enhance the video to help identify the suspect. But anyway, no one really was ever to say, oh, that is this person, so it turned out to not be as helpful as it should have been. Now, valuables left inside the car suggested that it was not a robbery. A search dog tracked the scent that led from her parked car back to her apartment complex, which suggests that the person drove her car, dropped it off, and then walked back to the same place where Jennifer lived. Now, a forensic examination of the car didn't give too much information. There was a latent print and a small DNA fiber. The investigators believed that the car was wiped down, and the following items are missing: her cell phone, her iPod, her keys, her purse, her briefcase, and the outfit that she was wearing that day, presumably. They were not able to ping her cell phone because it was off, and her bank account card has not been used since her disappearance. Now, investigators went to check the security cameras at Jennifer's own apartment complex, but they didn't have any. They did, however, have a gatehouse, it was a gated community. But the security guard there, who was supposed to log names and license numbers of visitors, hadn't really been completing these logs. And they would have liked to collect forensic information from Jennifer's own apartment, but it had not been secured in the beginning, and there had been at least 14 people in and out of her apartment since she went missing, so nothing reliable could really come from there. So the investigators interviewed Jennifer's family and her close friends to see if any of them could have a motive to have abducted her. They spoke with an ex-boyfriend who had been upset and wanted to get back with her, but they determined it was not him. They interviewed her current boyfriend, who had an alibi. At the time that she had gone missing, there was a major expansion going on at her condominium complex, and there were lots of laborers on site. Many of them were non-English speaking, and many of them were not legally in the country. So as soon as she disappeared and the police started getting involved, a lot of them just took off, they left and did not come back. And the ones who remained and who could be interviewed didn't speak English, so the police decided not to bother interviewing them. Yes, you heard me right. Since they didn't speak English, we're not gonna bother. We'll just talk to the people who speak English. So, according to Jennifer's family, she had told them that on several occasions, the construction workers constantly catcalled, whistled at, and harassed her, and she was uncomfortable with them. But there was no other evidence found she had turned him down, stating that she didn't want a workplace romance. But he was interviewed and ruled out as a suspect. And they came up with another possible theory, but not very likely, and that was perhaps she had fell victim to human trafficking. In May of 2007, so the following year, her company offered a $1 million reward for information leading to her whereabouts, with a July 4th deadline and the stipulation that she had to be alive, and it was never claimed. A $5,000 reward for information leading to the whereabouts of her remains was available through Central Florida Crime Line. But that wasn't received either, and this case received state and national press attention at the time of her disappearance, so it was a big deal. In 2009, so 3 years later, Detective Joel Wright decided to take a fresh look at the case, and he went and interviewed a former housekeeper at Jennifer's complex. She had not been interviewed before. He spoke with her through a translator, and she stated that she remembered the disappearance. She looked at the photo of the person who had dropped off Jennifer's car, and she said it looks like Chino. That's the only name she had, Chino. So there was a person named Chino who had been a maintenance worker at the building, and he lived there in a different section of the building from Jennifer. And he had done work in Jennifer's apartment 1 week before she disappeared. So he put the name Chino into a leads tracking system, and a tip did come up. A crime line tip had been received about Chino in the first week of the investigation in 2006. It was anonymous, and it suggested that he might have something to do with her disappearance, but it wasn't clear if the police had ever gone and spoken to Chino at all based on that tip. So, this detective found Chino. He was in prison. He was serving time in a Florida prison for a statutory RAPE of a teenage girl, which he had committed 2 years after Jennifer disappeared. So, Detective Wright interviewed him in 2009, and Detective Wright said to Chino, quote, "When you did the work in her unit, was she present while you were doing it?" Chino says, "Yes, she was." Detective Wright said, "How did you get into the condo?" And he said, "She let us in." The detective said, "Was everything normal?" And Chino said, "Everything was normal. She got ready for work and left." So Chino looked at the photo of the person walking by the fence, and he said that it wasn't him. He was very cooperative during the interview, but he said he had no involvement. He even took a lie detector test, which came out that he was being truthful. But you never know with those tests, right? So the detective wasn't completely convincing. But also, Chino is 5'9", so he's taller than the estimate that the FBI had come up with of the suspect. Detective Wright went on to interview another maintenance worker who worked with Chino and found nothing. He re-interviewed the building manager, who also had no information that was useful. And then the case stalled in 2010, and Detective Wright was removed from the case. his name was Michael Toretta, and he combed through all the records, and he realized that there was evidence that they had never been made aware of, such as the DNA in the car, and there was dust from the construction site on the hood of her car that had showed signs of a struggle in the dust. Jennifer's father, Drew, said to the media in 2022 that once they obtained these records, they found out that, quote, the lead detective on Jennifer's case did not write a single report or any document since 2010. 12 years. We firmly believe the department's negligence and lack of competency cost Jennifer the chance to be found, end quote. The private investigator went on to interview women who had lived at the same complex as Jennifer when she was there. A woman named Colleen said that although this was a gated community, the guard in the gatehouse was only there about 75% of the time. She also said that once workers started living in the empty apartments around the complex, she felt very uneasy. Now she said, quote, when I would come home from work, there would be a large group of men outside drinking. And whenever I would have to walk past them, you know there would be a little bit of comments or just a lot of uncomfortable stares. It wasn't a great feeling. I didn't like it. End quote. She said she complained to the leasing office manager, who said there was nothing that he could personally do. Another woman named Tammy moved into the complex a few years after Jennifer went missing, and she said she believes that workers have entered her apartment when she wasn't home. She said, quote, there was creepy things like my underwear drawer was tossed. One time the shower was wet. There was footprints in my closet, end quote. She said that she caught a peeping Tom, a man who she believes was a worker at the complex. She said, quote, he was pleasuring himself in the corner of my patio, end quote. She said that she caught him and he fled in a white van. She filed a police report, but he has never been found. Another woman who didn't want to be named said that Chino often approached her in the parking lot late at night when she returned home from work and made her feel uncomfortable. Another woman named Ashley used to socialize with Chino, and she found him to be very friendly and she trusted him. She even had him in her apartment to hang out. And she never was suspicious that he had done anything or had anything to do with Jennifer until one day, 9 months after the disappearance of Jennifer, Chino just vanished. He just suddenly disappeared in the middle of the night, never to be heard from again. And I guess she felt she was close enough to him that he should have told her that he was planning on leaving. So at first she did not reach out to police, she said. But then, according to her, quote, I sat on it for a little bit and it just ate away at me. So I did. I called the crime line back then and told them, and they took my statement, end quote. But no one ever followed up with her. So Chino was re-interviewed by the show 48 Hours, and he had been released from prison by then, and he was at his home. He continued to deny having anything to do with her disappearance. The private investigator, Michael Toretta, locking the door and never sees it coming. She probably was attacked immediately upon exiting. She's dragged into the other apartment, and that's the end. End quote. But unfortunately, he was never able to find these workers, the ones that he believes lived in the vacant apartment. The building management did not keep any lists of the names of these people, and they didn't keep track of who was living in which apartment. And there's nothing in the police files to suggest that any of them were ever interviewed. Another thing that the private investigator found out was that 10 months after Jennifer went missing, a person was seen dumping a rolled up piece of carpet into a lake not far from her condo. And it turns out that on the day she went missing, the men that were in the apartment across from her were putting down carpet. He believes that her body might have been rolled up in that carpet, and then it was disposed of in the lake. But in 2019, the local police came out with a dive team, and they did not find the carpet. In December of 2022, it was reported that the investigation into Jennifer Kesse's disappearance had been turned over to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Cold Case Unit. They intend to interview people that were already identified as possible suspects or people who may have valuable information, and they are planning on retesting evidence that Kesse's family says has never been retested, and she is still considered missing and endangered. If you have any information on Jennifer Kesse's disappearance, you can call the Kesse family tip line or crime line. I will post those numbers on the screen right here and in the description box below. And that is the case. What are your thoughts? I will share some of mine. First of all, I truly hope that Jennifer is somewhere alive and well as we speak. But to be honest, I don't believe that that is the case, unfortunately. I do feel that the private investigator's theory makes the most sense out of any other theory, and that the unnamed construction workers are most likely to blame for whatever happened to Jennifer. It's an awful miscarriage of justice that no one has ever been charged for her disappearance. In my opinion, the police definitely botched the case by having not interviewed the workmen that were there that first day when she went missing. And for them to have said that these men didn't speak English, and that's why they didn't interview them. I have never heard of such a thing. And they spoke Spanish. It wasn't some just, it was a language that nobody spoke anywhere in Orlando, Florida. It would have been very easy to get a translator. Very easy. But I guess they just didn't want to bother. They weren't taking it very seriously. They should have definitely searched that apartment that those men were staying in. There probably would have been evidence. Maybe she would have been in there, maybe still alive. Who knows? It is truly haunting to think about. And my heart goes out to her family. They still have no closure after over 18 years. I hope that someday, soon, someone comes out shares some evidence